Welcome back. This is the Pay-mentalist Podcast. I've got Jeremy Hall here with us, who has extensive experience in helping software companies develop and implement their integrated payment strategies, something that can be quite challenging and overwhelming for many software companies as they navigate the complexities and various options available to them in the payment ecosystem. I've invited Jeremy on the podcast to speak directly to many of the primary concerns and challenges and provide some insight and ideas to help software companies develop their embedded payment strategies with confidence, control, and a focus on maximizing value and revenue, and ultimately avoiding many of the pitfalls associated. So Jeremy, to get us started today, can you help us understand or explain the importance of adopting a flexible, evolving approach to the integrated payment strategy for software companies and how this can lead to greater success in maximizing revenue and value?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. So the question that you asked is a very interesting question, and one that I wish more software companies would consider before going down this path. Because you mentioned a word, flexible, right? There's an old saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Right.
And when software companies look at their payment strategy and what they're trying to accomplish, what they want to do, their ultimate goals and the outcomes that they're looking for, they put together a plan, they put it down on paper, and it looks great, right? The problem is there are so many nuances and so many different elements that you need to consider that you probably don't even know about or not even aware of, right? As a software company, you need to understand from your client's perspective, what do they want? What do they want? What are you going to be able to sell, right? And sell meaning what are they going to actually get by utilizing your payment strategy compared to somebody else's? And there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of mistakes that companies will make when they think about putting together a strategy for payments. One of which, a big one, is underestimating conversion and how easy it is to actually go and get a current payment portfolio transferred over to the new one that you're creating right now, right? People make the mistake in thinking that it's just going to be easy. Once we have the payment offering, people are just going to come over. It's not that simple. Even if they're great clients of yours, you need to have a really good plan in place for that, because what I see commonly is they have built the payment technology, they have it all ready, and they think it's a, hey, build it and they will come scenario, but that's just not the case, right? And that's what I mean when people get punched in the face, right? They spend all this money, the time, the energy, the effort to get it in place, but then they haven't thought through what's actually needed to convert their clients. And so you talked about the importance of a flexible strategy. The most important element to all of this is the partner that is enabling your payment technology, right? Because most software companies are not going to build this from the ground up. It doesn't make sense for them in most cases. And so what they do is they go out and they partner with a payment company that already has all of these elements built and operationalized. And in doing so, you're able to not incur all of those costs by recreating the wheel, right? You go partner with a payments company, and you utilize their sales team, you utilize their support and their underwriting. I mean, people misunderstand how much there really is that a support rep needs to know in order to fully support a payment portfolio. They need to know gateway-specific information. They need to know software-specific information, and they need to know how all of it connects, how all of it works. And so if there are any problems, they can articulately help their customers from a support perspective. So to answer your question, all of that doesn't matter if you don't have a partner that allows you flexibility, because you may have a plan, you may have it laid out on paper, and it's the greatest plan you've ever seen, but you're going to get punched in the face. And when you get punched in the face, you need to be able to move. You need to be able to bob and weave. And if you have a payment partner that has, contracts in place that don't allow you flexibility, that's the first mistake where people lose right out of the gate, and they don't even know that they've lost yet.
Right. As I think about it, a strategy day one is going to look a lot different down the road, right? And so when you talk about a payment partner's operations and infrastructure that you can leverage as you're just getting started. That's ideal because it gives the software company the opportunity to prove concepts, right? For someone who perhaps has very little payment expertise, who's never done this before, they can leverage the resources of the partner to prove concepts, right? Can we actually position and sell and competently convert customers to our portfolio? And if you can, great. Right, that will naturally help the software company understand how they should progress and evolve their strategy. So when you think about flexibility and optionality as critical components of a strategy, does this relationship with my payment processor enable us a path to evolve our strategy and perhaps get more aggressive? You have software companies that are actually talking about becoming payment companies, whether it be in the form of registering as a payment ISO or registering as a payment facilitator, right? We would never recommend a software company come out of the gates to do those things, right? But we would never tell them not to. So at the end of the day, as you're getting strategy started, don't make decisions that you're not capable of because frankly, you don't have the experience, you haven't proved the concept. And so that I think is what's really critical when you're looking at what does a flexible and strategy look like that gives us that optionality. So Absolutely. Let me ask you, Jeremy, what are some common challenges software companies face when trying to develop an integrated payment strategy, and how can they overcome these hurdles to ensure a successful implementation?
Yeah, great question. There is so much information out there about what companies think is the best way to do this. You had mentioned payment facilitation and going the route of becoming a PayFac, right? Or registering directly as an ISO. I think what you need to do as a software company, first and foremost, is really identify the outcomes. What are you really looking for? When you shave away everything else, what are the outcomes that you want? Because that will help dictate the strategy and how you need to actually position yourself today to allow yourself to naturally find your path. And here's the reality, Brandon. Some companies start out and they think that they want to own all of payments. They want to own the whole ecosystem. That's what they think is the best route and the best strategy for them. And they get halfway there and they realize the cost or the burden of compliance or the burden of underwriting is just not something that's in their wheelhouse. They're just not good at it. Or it doesn't make sense financially for them to take that in-house. You need to find a partner that allows you the ability to outsource those elements and still contractually function well, right? A lot of these routes that people say you have to go, like payment facilitation, will actually cut off some of the advantages strategically later on down the road that you might not care as much about today in year 1 or year 2, but will become a really big inhibitor for your growth in year 5, 6, 10. If there's ever any sort of transaction or any sort of rounds of funding and you want to be able to utilize payments as an asset for your company, there's major inhibitors, right? And so you need to make sure you've partnered with somebody that allows you flexibility through your growth and your natural progression in payments as a company. And then also don't be afraid to say, you know what, we don't have to take this element on. Be okay with saying, hey, we're good at sales and we've got a great sales team. We can handle the sales portion of this, but we are not good at underwriting payment contracts. That's okay. Don't force something that you're not good at as a company, because ultimately you'll lose a lot of money trying to operationalize something that is better to be outsourced in the first place. What you need to make sure you maintain is control and ownership of the contracts. And then all of the other stuff, it can kind of work its way where it fits best for your company.
Right. So in your experience, what key factors should software companies consider when selecting the right payment processing partner to support an evolving integrated payment strategy?
Yeah, I kind of just mentioned that, right? Control and ownership of your payment portfolio.
So what does that mean, Jeremy? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. So the difficulty up to this point has been, in order to actually have true control and ownership, you have to own the contracts. That's just period. That's it. That's the truth. In order to maximize control and ownership, you have to own your customers' contracts, your payment contracts. And in the world we live in today, there's very few options out there that allow you true ownership and control of the contractual elements to this. You traditionally have had to become an ISO and fully register with the card brands in order to accomplish that and check that off, right? Some payment facilitation companies will say, well, you own your portfolio. The reality is yeah, you may own the portfolio, but you don't have portability, right? Portability, as a payment facilitator, you essentially are under a master account. And so all of your specific customer contracts are a part of this big conglomerate of accounts that's actually owned by somebody else. That it's called a BIN, or a bank identification number, right? That's where all of your customer contracts live. And the most important element that you need to maintain as a long-term strategy is the ability to have ownership of your customer contracts, which is really, from a payments perspective, ownership of your BIN, your bank identification number, where all those contracts live. Because that now gives you the ability to truly have portability and movement with your portfolio, so that if you ever wanted to move processor to processor, you would be able to do that with a sign and acquisition, rather than rewriting each of your merchants individually over to a different company. So what it does is it really puts you in the driver's seat in controlling your merchant portfolio, and gives you ownership of the contracts, which really sets you free from a payments perspective.
Right, that makes sense. How can software companies avoid common pitfalls, such as starting too aggressively or partnering with the wrong payment processor when developing their integrated payment strategies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Too aggressively is one that we actually see a lot, because companies naturally have life cycles. And when a software company first starts out, generally they're focused on their core product, right? And they are making revenue, and they're doing well, and they grow, and they get to a certain point as a company where they're saying, okay, we are growing and we're doing well. How do we go get more revenue? How do we add more to the bottom line? And payments is a really natural next step for most software companies, because integrated payments go so well with software. And so they start to understand, hey, I can maximize revenue by adding payments as a part of my offering. Now, the mistake that they make is thinking, hey, if I own all of the payments, I'm going to get all of the revenue, right? And it makes sense. And that's pretty close to the truth. But what people don't consider is the cost that it's going to the cost that you're going to incur as a software company in order to support that payment ecosystem that you're bringing in-house, okay? Again, when we really strip away everything else, the most important elements that you need in order to maintain long-term a strategy that will allow you to do that is, number one, control. Number two, ownership. You have to have control and ownership of your portfolio. All of the rest of that stuff, I would actually highly recommend you keep outsourced, and take one step at a time, baby steps, right? Don't take it all on out of the gate, because your propensity for failure or catastrophic loss is very high when you do it that way, right? Your core business is not payments. This is something that you need to learn and take a graduated approach to learning. Take sales for the first year. Make sure that you're really good at converting your customer base, right? Because if you're not good at converting your customer base, listen, a sale for a merchant account is a lot different than a sale for a SaaS account. It's just different fundamentally. And so you need to make sure you're good at that. So take sales, for example. If you decide, hey, I'm going to take sales in-house for payments, all right? Right now, you probably sell SaaS in-house, and so you think it's going to be a really easy transition to sell payments alongside of your SaaS product. In a lot of cases, it can be, but the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to be as efficient and as good as your conversion rate with your sales team and your sales force who's never sold payments before? Is it going to be as good as a professional payment sales team is? And usually the answer is no. Usually there's a lot of tips and tricks that you can learn by partnering closely with your payment company and understanding their sales processes, right? And I would just always recommend people take a graduated approach to that, because the reality is, if you can't convert as well as your sales partner can, your payment sales partner can, you're losing. You're losing clients, you're losing money, you're losing revenue. Not to mention, you've now incurred overhead costs, because you probably need to hire some more salespeople. You're probably going to have to support that as well. So you've incurred more cost, and you're converting at a lower rate. And that doesn't make sense financially, right? At the end of the day, it usually doesn't. And so make sure, and that goes for every element of the payment ecosystem: underwriting, risk, compliance. There's a whole nother gambit of potential pitfalls from a compliance perspective, right? If you get a fine for one merchant because you didn't catch it, you're now responsible for that. And it can be tremendously expensive. So just understand that if you can take a graduated approach to payments, it's always better than taking on the whole enchilada out of the gate, because it gives you time to practice. It gives you time to get really good and proficient at one thing and then move on to the next.
Yeah. Jerry, if I'm sitting here just listening to this, I'm trying to empathize with the software company who's listening to this. While this is excellent advice, we've used acronyms and terminology that, frankly, they're not even probably familiar with. So you can just, again, sympathizing with them. This is overwhelming, right? It's, what decisions do I have to make today? They're going to put me in the best position to maximize the value of my business and revenue and profitability of my company, right? And so what we're in essence trying to say is to alleviate a lot of the pressure with feeling like you have to make all the right decisions today. That you have to ultimately make a decision of what the totality of your payment journey will look like. And that's certainly not the case, because the reality is that it's different, dynamic, and customized for everybody based on the industries they service, the makeup of their business, operationally what they can take on, the level of experience and resources they have to this, and most importantly, their ambitions and goals as a business. So often, I think software companies get trapped in focusing on the methodology, like, is it an ISO? Do I partner with this person? Do I become a PayFac? What's most important at the end of the day is purely making a decision that enables a gradual approach that over time doesn't limit you to evolve or adapt or pivot. That's what you need to decide today, right? And then naturally and organically, as you prove the concept, you gain experience and knowledge, your strategy should organically dictate a natural path of evolution. Whether that ultimately means registering as a payment facilitator, registering as a payment company or ISO, or continually to leverage the resources of a payment partner, right? So that's, I think, the advice that I would give any software company today is just make sure that you are finding the right payment processor that gives you that optionality, that is just as invested in the same ambitions and goals and philosophy that you have as a business. If you can do that, then you've made the right decision as you're getting started.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right, Brendan. It becomes very organic. And it's funny because I talk to a lot of software companies and they have all of these questions and they have, everything written down. Like, we need to know the ins and outs of every single element to this. And while I agree, it's smart for them to do that, 9 times out of 10, that strategy
Jeremy,
changes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years and I'm learning things new every day. That's just the reality.
Yes.
You're not going to acquire payment knowledge and expertise overnight. That's just not the way it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And to your point, the most important thing they can do is go down the path with a partner that allows them to be nimble, that allows them to change, and even walk some things back, right? Sometimes you'll take on sales and say, we're going to do this. Partner with a company that will ultimately allow you to say, hey, you know what? We tried sales and we're bad at it.
Yeah.
and we want you to take it back over, right? But a lot of contracts, a lot of options out there won't allow you to do that. They force you to either take it all or nothing. And that's the beauty of finding a partner.
You make a good point. It's, again, it's deciding what we will or won't do with our strategy. Are we going to partner? Are we going to do sales? Again, you're getting fixated on the method. At the end of the day, it's always the execution of the strategy that's most important. And I've been doing this for a long time, I've seen software companies go a multitude of directions and accomplish very little or the same results, right? And at the end of the day, I'm confident whether a software company partners with someone, refers business out, becomes an ISO, registers as a PayFac, I'm confident when they focus first on the execution of a go-to-market strategy that's focused on driving conversion and maximizing revenue and profitability, you can achieve the same results. That's the most important thing. Again, can you adequately position, sell the integrated payment service, right? And then from there, again, it'll dictate what you should do naturally, but that's what you need to be fixated on first. getting those things right.
Absolutely. And then really revenue projection models kind of take over from there.
Yeah.
You know about what your overhead costs are going to be for a sales team. You know about what they're going to be for a support team. Now, there's some payment knowledge that you have to also learn as well. But yeah, it really, from that point forward, if you can answer that question, you can say, yes, we're good at this and we can execute this strategy well. Everything else really seems to fall into place, but just make sure you don't pigeonhole yourself with contracts with companies that don't allow you to naturally progress through that natural life cycle of taking on payments.
Right. So, Jeremy, can you share some success stories of software companies that have effectively implemented an integrated payment strategy? Maybe discuss the impact it had on their business growth and profitability?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it really all starts from the conversations that are had about what their outcomes are. What are the outcomes that they want and they want to achieve as a company? And then from there, we get really specific on what are the needs for your clients. And let's make sure those two things match up, right? Let's make sure that there's synergy between those two things. And it's a beautiful thing because if software companies truly put themselves in the shoes of their clients, then I'm confident that they can curate a strategy that is beneficial for them from a revenue perspective, from an ownership perspective, an asset value perspective, and something that they can take to market that their customers are going to buy, their customers are going to utilize, and that is where you have the most success. It's easier said than done,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
It takes market research. You have to understand your customers and what they want and what they need. But if you have a payment partner that understands that, they can help guide you through that process. Good payment partners understand that, and they understand how to help you find what those things are that your customers really want, so that you can have a go-to-market strategy that's successful, you can get the conversion that you want, and do it the right way. We've had a lot of partners come to us and, they all start with all these grand visions of making tons of revenue and adding all of these features and values and benefits for their customers, right? But then when we actually go through the process, we have a very meticulous process we go through with each of these customers, right? And we talk about, okay, here's going to be your overhead cost if you want to take on sales. Here's what it costs for support. And they really start to understand that if they have the best interest of their merchants at heart, they'll understand, hey, we need to prove concept. We need to make sure that we do this the right way. And then what makes them successful is doing it that way, because then they realize, like, okay, I'm having success. I outsourced sales and support in the beginning, but I've also spent the last year with my payment partner learning how to do it, because I'm walking right alongside them through this journey, through this path. And then, and only then, once they understand all of the nuance, I say all of the nuance, most of the nuance, because there's always new ones popping up, I swear. But once they understand that, only then are they really prepared, or as prepared as they can be, to then take that in-house. When you start from scratch and you don't know anything about it and you try to go for everything out of the gate, it's almost inevitable that things will happen that you didn't see coming, and they end up being big losses.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, to wrap this up, what final parting advice would you give software executives today who may feel overwhelmed or concerned about making the right strategic decisions today for their company's integrated payment strategy? And how can you help them approach this with confidence?
Yeah. When we first ask that question, when we have a new partner come to us and we ask that question, we say, hey, what's most important to you from a payments perspective? It's like they haven't really dialed that piece in yet. And so the best piece of advice I can give is spend some time thinking about, what do you ultimately want out of your payment strategy? Is it asset value? Do you want to own your customer contracts and add that as an asset for your company? Is it control over the merchant's experience, the customer experience that they have, the customer journey that they go through? Is that the most important thing for you? Is revenue from this the most important thing from you? And all of these things are important, but I would go through and I would list out what are the most important elements. And then you're prepared to then take this list to your payment partner and ask them questions specifically around each one of those. And then you're prepared to make the best decision as a software company with which partner is going to be as closely aligned to your goals and the outcomes that you have as possible. And then go with that partner.
Right. Okay. Well, Jeremy, I appreciate your time today. This has been phenomenal. Great content. Hope we can have you back soon.
Absolutely.
In the podcast. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in today. Please visit our website, next.io, for more tips, ideas, and insights to enhance the value of your integrated payment strategy. Thanks.